Welcome back. Let's get right to work on the tail. Go back into the orthographic view and pan the view over, framing it up to get a better view of the tail area. With the rectangle select tool and vertex element selected, drag select the vertices in the upper right corner of the box and move them down to line up with the hump of the fin in the drawing. Line up the next set of vertices with this point where the fin profile changes direction. Let's bring the other vertices on the front edge to line up with our drawing. For the middle vertex, line it up with the vertex opposing it in the body. This middle vertex let's move to align with the central branch of the fin structure. Drag the bottom middle vertex to line up with the drawing and the others in its loop. Now line up the outer vertices with the prominent outer edges of the fin in the drawing. We're going to need more geometry to better approximate the shape in the drawing, so let's use the Add Loop tool to add 2 more loops to the tail. Select the Add Loop tool from the icon flyout on the Edit toolbar. To select where to place the new loop, position the mouse close to one of the edges you want the new loop to split, and then click the left mouse button to place the new loop. Add another loop on the left side as well. Click the Rectangle Select tool to activate it and to also exit the Add Loop tool. Drag select the newly created vertices and position them to better define the tail fin shape. Continue to adjust the vertices using the Rectangular Select tool to select them, and the widget to quickly move them into position. The thing to remember here is that a polygonal object cannot exactly match the subtle curves of an organic object, so part of the art is learning where to place the geometry to best approximate the shape. If we switch back to perspective view using the perspective icon, we can see that the Add Loop tool placed the new edge loops all the way around the model. Now for the tricky part. Since we don't have a front, back, or top template image, we're going to have to wing it on sculpting the width for the tail fin. Select the back row of vertices and rotate the view to get a better angle of the fin width. Scale them in along the y-axis until the back of the fin is very narrow. Then rotate the view back to almost straight on with the template image and select the next row of vertices. Rotate the view back to an angle that lets us see the width of the fin, and again scale the vertices down in Y. Continue with the rest of the rows. Basically, we want to taper down the width of the fin to make it look less blocky. This technique of using different view angles, one for selecting and then another for adjusting the geometry, is very effective. If you have a fair bit of screen real estate, you could also open up 2 3D windows and use one for selecting and the other for adjusting. Now that we have a more reasonable fin width, we need to scale the end loop of vertices on the body section to better match up with those of the tail. Select the last vertex loop on the body, then rotate the view to line things up as best as possible, and scale the vertices down in Y until they line up pretty well. Repeat this with the next loop of vertices on the body. We only need to scale this next loop in Y slightly to ease the transition from the round body to the tall fin shape. Next, let's round out the top and bottom of the fin. For this, I'm going to use some tricky selection work, so navigate the view to frame up on the tail area. Choose Pick and Paint from the Selection Tools flyout, and also choose Select Edge Loops. Now very carefully mouse over the outer edge of the back of the fin, and when the outer loop of the fin is highlighted, click the left mouse button to select it. Once you get the outer loop selected, hold down the Control key and mouse over the outer edge for the other side of the fin. With the opposite outer edge loop highlighted, left-click to add it to the selection. You can now let go of the Control key, and both outer edge loops will be selected. With both outer edges selected, left-click drag on the Widget Z-axis scale box to scale the loops vertically. Rotate your view. Now use the widget to scale the loops in X and Y as needed. Using the gray triangle part of the widget, move the selected loops forward and up a bit in the XZ plane. This rounds out our fin shape so that it looks less boxy. We're ready to join up the tail with the body now, so let's delete the interior faces that we no longer need. Change the element selection type to face. Rotate the view so the 8-sided face at the end of the cylinder can be seen, and go ahead and click on it. With the 8-sided face selected, choose the Delete tool from the Point Edit Tools flyout. This deletes the selected face from the mesh. We need to also do the same thing to the 4 opposing faces on the tail. Rotate the view to look straight onto the fish, change the selection tool to rectangular select, use the drag select technique to include all 4 faces on the front of the tail section, rotate your view to make sure you have the right faces selected, and click on the delete tool again. With both parts now prepared, we need to add the faces to connect the 2 parts. Choose the Pick and Paint Selected tool and change the element type to Select Edges. Now select an edge on the opening of the tail fin, then hold down Control and select its opposing edge on the body opening. This way you will have both edges selected. Find and select the Form Face tools from the Tools flyout. This creates a new face which bridges the 2 edges. Repeat this for the remaining edges. Also, don't worry too much about the widget, since you can select through it. For some of the selections, you may want to rotate the view after selecting to make sure that you have the correct set of edges selected before clicking the Add Edges icon. And don't forget that you can use Ctrl-Z to undo if you accidentally connect the wrong 2 edges. Once finished adding faces, go ahead and click in an empty space to clear the selection. I noticed while adding the faces that things are still a fair bit boxy at the top and bottom where the fin meets the body. So switch to Rectangular Select and Vertex Element Type and drag select each of the 4 corner vertices at the start of the tail. You'll have to work the view a bit to get them all selected. And don't forget that you need to hold down the Control key while drag selecting to add each vertex to the existing selection. Now scale them down in Y and also some in Z to ease the transition from the body to the fin. Finally, remove the top 2 vertices from the selection by holding Shift and drag selecting over them. Then use the widget to move the bottom 2 vertices up and back in the XZ plane so that they better fit the curve of the body and the fin. With that done, drag in an empty space to clear the selection, and let's pause here.